At this time, I'll call the May 1st, 2023 County Council meeting to order. I want to welcome all of our visitors in the gallery here. We appreciate you being here tonight. At this time, I'll recognize the Honorable Allison Love, who will lead us in invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight asking for your blessing as we are gathered together. We pray for guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work with professional enthusiasm and spirit. Give us the desire to find ways to excel in your work. In your name we ask, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do not have any oath of office tonight, but we do have a special motion that I'll recognize Ms. Love.
I move to suspend the rules and dispense with referral to committee to move new business item number 1 to before public forum for the purposes of considering a resolution recognizing May 7 through 13, 2023 as National Correctional Officer Appreciation Week.
Thank you, Ms. Love. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We'll move now straight to new business, and we did this in order to be able to allow some special folks that we have in the gallery to join us for a resolution. I'll read the new business, and then I'll ask folks to come forward. Council to authorize a resolution recognizing May 7th through the 13th, 2023, a National Correctional Officer Appreciation Week. For those of you who don't know, Council had the opportunity to go to the York County Sheriff's Office to take a tour of the detention center, and I think it's an understatement to say that our council was extremely impressed with the teamwork atmosphere, with the cleanliness, with the approach that our department takes. Sheriff Tolson, at this time, if Chief John Hicks and Chief Rodney Hope would come forward with staff, if y'all come forward and stand in front of the podium, all y'all come on forward. You know, one of the things that council was so impressed with is the job that you do, and oftentimes that job goes unthanked and unrecognized. And we want to take the opportunity to recognize you all and to thank you for the service that you provide. The resolution provides as follows. Whereas in the year 1984, President Ronald Reagan established the first week of May as National Correctional Officers Week. And whereas the York County Detention Center and the York County Prison are the agencies with employees designated and certified as detention officers and correctional officers. And whereas the detention center and prison are responsible for community safety by housing, supervising, and ensuring the well-being of incarcerated individuals. And whereas housing inmates means much more than providing them a place to sleep. It means meeting the physical needs, medical needs, mental health needs, and social needs of those in their charge in the best way possible, oftentimes with limited resources. And whereas these officers serve around the clock and many times sacrifice personal and family time to provide a necessary but thankless, unrecognized, and behind-the-scenes service to the public. Now, therefore, be it resolved that York County Council does hereby declare the week of May 7th through the 13th, 2023 as Detention and Correctional Officer Week in York County, and ask that all citizens recognize the officers for their faithful and dedicated service to their community. At this time, do we have a motion to approve this resolution?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are glad to pass this resolution. If we can get a photo, if the council will move in together.
Mark, you're getting a tall shot out there, aren't you? Getting everybody in that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm going to give you a minute. You want a minute? I'm going to give you and Chief Hicks. You and at this time, I will recognize Chief Hicks and Chief Hope. If you want to say any words, I know we've got some vacancies. You may want to put in a plug for, for applications.
Obviously, just first and foremost, we just appreciate just the fact that you guys officially passed that resolution. We loved having you guys at the facility to really kind of share a lot of what we do on a daily basis, which doesn't get seen very often. We're typically the part of law enforcement that doesn't get seen, doesn't get heard of until something bad happens. And to have you guys be able to kind of walk around in the facility in the middle of our housing units to really see what our staff do, and the ones behind me are the reason why we are so successful is because of each of them. Has nothing to do with Sheriff Tolson, has nothing to do with myself or Chief Hope, but it's each one of those that work those housing units on a daily basis. We are officers, we are parents, we are counselors, we are obviously at different times, at different roles, and we wear many different hats. So we appreciate your time tonight, recognizing the hard work that our staff do. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Hicks. On behalf of council, I do want to say once again, one of the most, I think, profound things that we saw when we came and did the tour was how much you operate as a team and support each other. That really was very clear, and we appreciate what you do for the county. Thank you again. We move now to the public forum session of our agenda. This is an opportunity for individuals to address council and to speak to us for 2 minutes without us interrupting you or saying anything. We ask that you follow the rules when you sign up to speak on that. And if you would, when you come forward, when I call your name, if you'll just state your name and give your address before you start speaking. And then the 2 minutes mark will start. And if you will pay attention to the screen, it will give you a warning. And then when the 2 minutes is up, it'll go to red. So if you can pay attention to that, I would appreciate it. It looks like we've got several folks that struck off. The first is Lori Robichaud.
Good evening. I'm Lori Robichaud. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Council of York County, and I'm here to ask for money. You probably knew that. For at least 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, we received a grant ranging from $42,000 to $60,000 each year from the hospitality tax, and we've been very good stewards of those funds over that time. My understanding is that 3 years ago, the H-tax funds were directed elsewhere, and then we had a pandemic, and then my predecessor at the Arts Council retired, and that's why you haven't heard from us since then. But the Arts Council is still here. We are programming artistic events and marketing those events to tourists while providing important services to county residents. We partner with other organizations to brand York County as a regional arts destination, marketing events in all municipalities and throughout the county. I hope you've heard of our big ones, the Ag and Art Tour, which started here in York County, the Blues and Jazz Festival, the Underexposed Film Festival, a short film festival, and at least 10 annual art exhibitions in our gallery in Old Town Rock Hill. We've spent much of the last year coming out of the pandemic bringing back that programming that's been long supported by the county, but our meager reserves are dwindling without that critical support. So I am signed up for the budget workshop on May 23rd. We're coming in with an ask of $75,000, $60,000 for program and marketing costs, similar to what was funded before, and a new ask of $15,000 to help our longstanding small grant programs that fund York County artists and nonprofits. It's to replace some state funding that has been redirected away from that after a long time. So we're thrilled the county supports arts, culture, and tourism via the Culture and Heritage Museums, the York County Library, and Visit York County, all partners of ours. But the arts piece is now missing, and we hope you'll give strong consideration to restoring it. I'll be back, and by God, 2 minutes. Thank you so much for listening. We gave out a one-pager, I hope, that Karen's given out, and I'll be back to answer questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Right on time. And we do have 7 folks that signed up, I believe, incorrectly. It looks like they scratched their names off for the York County Detention Center issue, but their names are scratched off, so I'm going to skip them, and the only other individual who signed up is Amy Begum. It looks like you're here for a public hearing item, which when that item comes up, you are more than welcome to come speak with unlimited time. So we'll move on to that. If anyone did want to speak who came to appear for the item of discussion of York County Detention Center, if you want to come forward. Hearing none, we will end our public forum session. You're just walking in. Looks like he's gonna. If you're here for a public hearing item, which it looks like you are, you've got an orange card, you can wait until we call that item and you can speak at that time. Okay? Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, consent agenda is approved. We move now to our first public hearing item. Council to hold a public hearing and consider third reading of an ordinance to amend section 155.1327 technical studies of the York County Code of Ordinances so as to expand the applicability of the technical reports and studies, to enhance the scope of the technical reports and studies, to provide for the implementation of the conclusions and or recommendations of the technical reports and studies, to provide for a public hearing, and to provide for other matters related thereto. Is there any presentation from staff at this point? Okay, thank you, Mr. Buono. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against?
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to item number 2, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 23-12, tax map number 267000012 to rezone from AGC to RUD, 6.86 acres in District 3. Mr. Buono?
Yes, the applicant here is seeking to rezone from AGC to RUD over this 6.86 acre property for the purposes of building one additional home. They'd like to subdivide to have 2 lots. The proposal is mostly consistent with the comp plan and the future land use map. That's because Grandview Road here kind of serves as a split with the agriculture future land use designation on the east side and rural residential on the west side. If you look at the zoning map there on the left side of this image here, you can see that there is RUD all along that west side of Grandview, and the adjacent property directly to the north is also RUD as well. The uses of a single-family home are compatible with those that are existing in the area, and the property is not currently being used for agriculture. So staff recommends approval, and by a vote of 7-0, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions for staff? Hearing none, we will open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries and public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to public hearing item number 3, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading case number 23-13, tax map number 60500000033 to rezone from NC to RSF 40, 1 acre in District 4. Mr. Buono.
Yes, this property is currently neighborhood commercial. There is an existing single-family home on the property. The owner wishes to construct an accessory garage, and the only way to do that is to rezone to a residential district. So the applicant is proposing to rezone to RSF 40 to eliminate that non-conformity. Staff recommends approval. This application is consistent with the comp plan and the future land use map. There is the underlying single-family residential future land use designation, which matches with the proposal. There is a node here for a rural center, but rezoning now for the existing single-family use does not preclude a future rezoning to commercial development, so this proposal remains consistent. There is RSF 40 property in the immediate vicinity. You can see to the north and south on Dunlap Roddy Road, both parcels adjacent are RSF 40 as well. And this would eliminate the non-conforming status of the property and allow the owner to construct that garage. So staff recommends approval, and by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. Anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to public hearing item number 4, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-14, tax map number 65000000004, to rezone from RMX 20 to GC 4.17 acres in District 1. Mr. Buono.
Yes, the applicant's proposing to go from RMX 20 to GC for the purposes of developing a multi-tenant commercial shopping plaza. So here's a conceptual plan of what that would look like. A couple of retail, commercial, potentially restaurant buildings here with multiple tenants. Here's what that would look like in context with the rest of the area. As you can tell, the north side of Gold Hill Road in this area is prime for development. So staff recommends approval. The proposal is consistent with the comp plan and future land use map. GC is consistent with the community center node that is in this area. And by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, I
Mr.
just
Audette.
have one quick question on that. Has there been, appreciate you bringing this to us. Has there been any look at the traffic study that's related to this?
No, a traffic study is not required at the
Okay.
rezoning stage.
Okay.
And they have a very conceptual diagram of what they'd like to do at this point. So once they come in for full civil design, then they'd have a better idea of what the users of that site are going to be, and that'll give us a definite traffic number to evaluate.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, is there anyone here who wishes to speak against? If you'll come forward and give your name and address.
My name is Robert Renucci. This is my mother, Barbara O'Connell. She's the actual owner of a home directly across the street from where they're trying to develop this. And needless to say, we are not looking for heavy traffic, commercial property being put up across our road unless we are able to rezone ours for the same for future sale to develop as a commercial property.
Thank you, sir.
That's, I mean,
Do you have anything to add?
you have anything to add to that?
No, I just don't want it there. I can hardly get out of my driveway now.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
So like I said, if, eventually, like he made the comment, there's plenty of land there that's obviously eventually it's gonna be developed. I mean, but if we're gonna go commercial, then I feel that any properties on that road at some point that face the road, enter from the main road, should have the opportunity to have the same zoning, so that way their future can be grown in the same, aspect per se. And like I said, when we bought the home, Gold Hill Road was 2 lanes. Our real estate agent knew that this was going to happen. We were not told that. That was 20 years ago now, but with that being said, like I said, it's impossible to get out of our driveway. The way they built the road in front of the home as it is,
Our home is down now in a gully.
yeah,
And
because
every
of what
time
they're
it
doing.
rains, we are like in a moat.
Yeah. So now we've had damage to the home due to water. We've touched base with the town in regards to redoing the curbs so that way the water doesn't just run down our driveway. It's supposed to run by it into a sewer, which it does not. So we
And I
have,
gave the permission, as a matter of fact. I don't know exactly what they built, but they wanted to build something on our land so that all the water would go out into the lake there.
the runoff in the back.
But
of
I've
the
never,
property. But they didn't do it. They stopped actually in the middle of our side yard with a huge manhole raised above ground, and every time we've tried to do something about it, they come out, they talk to us, and then it just gets blown off, and honestly, it's been years, and we've gotten nowhere with it. So financially, there's no money to hire an attorney to start to fight that, and so at this point, when this came in, we were like, this is, the time that if that's gonna happen, then at least if our land can be commercial, then we could sell at some point and let them develop there also.
on our side of the street on Gold Hill Road, there's quite a few commercial buildings.
That are slowly coming up.
Yeah.
Because just down the road from us, there was a trailer there on some land. They've since then developed a daycare center, and then they just put up another couple more units that they're in the middle of constructing now. So we know at some point, Gold Hill being 5 lanes is going to be majority commercial. I mean, that's just the future. I mean, I always see that, but we feel like we're down in a hole and we're gonna be stuck in the middle of this, and obviously that depreciates the value of our property because we can't do anything with it. No one's gonna wanna live there, So it puts us in a predicament. So I feel that if the agreement was that we have the opportunity to turn commercial, so that way someone could develop a similar idea on there, then maybe we can, discuss that, but at this point, our argument is that,
This is
it's not
li-
fair.
Yeah, this is a little bit, I just want to give you my card because you're in my district, so please contact me and we could discuss, further in regards to the water issues. Yep, thank you.
Do you have any other comments to put on the public record?
No, I just don't want it.
I think we've heard that. Thank you, ma'am.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
We will
absolutely.
start off.
Sounds good.
Which property is yours? Is it shown there?
If you look directly across the street where the road is, the second block over, it kind of looks like an L.
Yeah.
That's ours. The gentleman who owns the land, that little square section, it's just been a vacant piece of property for years, and he has been trying to get zone, I don't know what letter combination, commercial, but he was trying to put some sort of, like plant nursery or something like light commercial like there. And like I told him, I'm not 100% against, we're not against it, really, but I'm not gonna allow it unless we're allowed. And unfortunately, some of the properties, like including ours, when they built it, they opted to be part of Carrollwood subdivision, but our house faces Gold Hill Road, our driveway enters Gold Hill Road. And I think the guy who built the house was more value saying we're part of Carrollwoods, because
If you don't mind, make sure your comments are in the mic so that they get captured for the record. I'm sorry, I should have caught that
That's all
earlier.
right. But that lot there, he's been trying for years. Like I told him, if you want us to agree, which we will, because eventually, being a 5-lane highway, it's going to be majority commercial, not residential. But there's only one more lot next to him, who he's also part of Carrollwoods, the Tulls. But they're an old couple, and, I've talked to a few of our neighbors. Our neighbor up on the hill, which is directly across the street, I mean, she's handicapped also and can't even get out of the house, and she's by herself. So there was no way I could have got her here today too, but, that's, old people have been living, you know what I mean? And they've been here for years, and everything's been developing around them, and, it's hard for them to even get out to speak, and, so. But yes, that be said, I guess I will touch base with you, Tom, and,
Sounds good.
and go from there, but I don't know
Thank you, sir.
what the future lies with that, but.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, I'll look out for the
Thank
call.
you.
Thank you.
Just for purposes of anyone else who is here for the public hearing on a rezoning item, the way these are typically done is, I believe these are all first readings. There are 3 readings that are required to pass an ordinance, and so typically the first reading is one that goes through, and then there's discussions and evaluations after that for council, but this is our opportunity to hear from public. It's not always the case, but I did want you to know that this is not the last point in
Well, yeah,
time.
he had
There are
made a
3
comment about
hearings.
traffic and control and things like that, so I knew that, but we had to, this is, because I think the lot next door was originally a church bought it. I don't know how true that still is, but it's been vacant for years and they just never developed. I mean, they've owned it for as long as we've owned the home, I think. And nothing's ever been done except sell Christmas trees out of it at Christmas time, you know, but I actually thought that was the lot. Now, seeing exactly where it is, you know, now I know a little bit more. It's actually, I have nothing to do with them. It's the next one over.
Thank you, sir.
So-
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
What does it mean when it says the planning commission recommends approval?
Basically, before it comes to us, it goes to a different board that takes a look at it from the perspective of our comprehensive plan, and they approved that. That's what the explanation is, and I'll direct you to our planning director too, who's spoken, and over here to the right, if you have other questions about the process itself, he certainly can help you with that, if you don't have any other public comments.
No, this time, I think we have a contact there. We can get with you also and discuss possible futures with ours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against this request?
I'm Joy Cranford. My address is 1500 Gold Hill Road, Fort Mill, South Carolina. I own the adjacent property to the property that's being rezoned, and I used to own this property. In 2006, my husband and I sold this property to TKK Baptist Church for the purpose of adding our property to their property, which they were planning to build a church on. This was their request, and that was the reason we sold the property to the church. I have to admit that I am sad that it won't be used for that purpose, and my family regrets that it won't be used for that intended purpose. I guess living next door to a church is not quite the same as living next door to a commercial shopping center, is it? But property owners don't always have control over those things. I know times have changed, and I understand that the church's desire is to sell their property to make it more possible for them to build their church. And I do wish the church well, and I hope that they will be able to build the church that will be a blessing in the community. As for the commercial shopping center next door, I can only hope that they will be a good neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor? If you'll come forward.
Hello, and thanks for having us here tonight. And my name is Mike Boston, the petitioner for the site. I think I'm going to go backwards. I wanted to just say that to the one who sold, to her, that the church did have very good goals when they put the signage up to try to sell the property to raise funds and to do good things with the funds they would receive from the property. So I hope, I want to assure you, and I want to assure, where did they go? Oh, here you are. I wanted to assure you, both of you, that our intentions are to be great neighbors, okay? We want to provide services that are good for the community. And you had mentioned something about the water runoff and things like that. And I agree with you. A lot of times in development, it's just not handled as well as it could be. But one of the things that you all make sure that we do is to handle the water runoff on a site so that it actually improves the area and doesn't make it a worse situation. So, if at the end, if any of you would like my name and contact number, I'd like to give it to you. So if there's any issues as we move along, at least you have a direct contact with us. Our intentions are really to do good things for the area. We know it's really booming there, and Gold Hill Road is a very busy road. And we intend to provide some good retail and service-oriented space. So if there's any questions as we move along, we'll certainly be around to answer any other questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Do we have a new motion?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to public hearing, item number 5, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading. Case number 23-16, tax map number 68000000050, 61400000036, to rezone from RSF 40 to RUD, 4.63 acre portion of 2 parcels that total 70.6 acres in District 5. Mr. Bueno?
Yes, this application, it does have 2 rather large parcels, but this rezoning request is limited to a smaller portion, the 4.6 acres of those 2 parcels, to go to RUD. And the purpose for that is to facilitate a proposed recombination. You cannot create a parcel that has split zoning, so they have a preliminary approval for a recombination plat subject to approval of this rezoning. The hatched area is the area that's being rezoned to RUD, and that would help them facilitate their proposed recombination between these 2 lots. No development is proposed at this time. Staff recommends approval. It's consistent with the comp plan and the future land use map, and it simply eliminates the existing split zone status on the existing parcel that's to the south and for the future recombination. And by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for staff? Do we have anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We move now to item number 6, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading. Case number 23-17, tax map number 63400000074, to rezone from RSF 30 to GC, 0.26 acres in District 6.
Yes, this rezoning is for RSF 30 to GC. The applicant owns the adjacent property there directly to the west. And he's seeking to expand his existing Fast Signs business onto the subject property. There are some existing buildings that they would like to utilize on that property. It's consistent with the comp plan and future land use map. This is a municipal infill designation, and general commercial is consistent with Rock Hill's community commercial future land use designation. We did receive some comments from the city of Rock Hill, and it was limited to commenting on the fact that if the applicant intends to use city services in the future, they would be required to either annex or sign an annexation agreement, and the applicant has indicated they do not plan to extend services to this parcel at this time. This would expand that existing general commercial district to the adjacent parcel. There is general commercial immediately next door, and then across Farlow Street all along Cherry Road. So staff recommends approval, and by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions?
Yes.
Mr. Roddy?
Would these 2 lots be combined, or it's going to stay separate?
I believe it is their intent to combine them.
Any other questions? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Do we have a
Second.
motion and a second to close the public hearing? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Do we have a new motion?
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to item number 7, public hearing, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading. Case number 23-18, tax map number 65000000666. Major, that should not be allowed. Major PD amendment in District 1. Mr. Bueno.
Yes, this is a major PD amendment. while it would modify the entire PD, the modification that's proposed would really only be applicable to 2.2 acres of the overall 102 acres. And so that's what's highlighted in red there, that undeveloped parcel. So just a little bit of history with the Stockbridge Village PD. It's a mixed-use PD, and it was adopted in 2008. It included an approval for up to 1,221 dwelling units. Far less than that were constructed. All of those are included in the Hawks Creek subdivision and the arbors at Fort Mill, which are our apartments. And the applicant is seeking to develop the remaining portion of Village D with a daycare facility. So here is a conceptual site plan for that daycare facility. So there's some nuance here. The Stockbridge PD requires that the developers abide by the 2006 parking requirements. According to those requirements, they would be required to provide about 80 spaces based upon their proposed daycare facility. And the ITE manual, which is the traffic engineer's manual on parking, would require about 30 to 48 spaces, depending on the different studies that are utilized in that manual. They're based on things like building area, the students that are proposed to attend the facility, and the number of staff. The applicant is requesting this PD amendment to have the flexibility to have their parking based on the ITE manual rather than the 2006 parking requirements with zoning administrator approval. The revision is listed here, and that's to conditional notes number 9 covering parking. So here's the zoning and the future land use map for the area. It is PD, and PD is consistent with the community center node that's depicted here. Staff recommends approval with some additional amendments beyond those originally proposed. And that's listed here. So the text that would be added is, if an alternative parking method is executed, the following site improvements are required as conditions of zoning compliance, site of plan approval, and shall be installed prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy for tax map number 650-0000666. A painted crosswalk shall be located crossing Grant Farm Road, connecting the subject parcel to the pedestrian network of the nearby residential uses. And B, a sidewalk shall be constructed along the subject parcel's frontage. And staff had proposed those additional amendments because if the parking requirements are going to be lowered, there will be some use of that facility likely coming from the immediate adjacent residential community, and there's some fluidity and pedestrian network enhancements that would be had by having a crosswalk and a sidewalk present on that facility. And Planning Commission likewise recommended those amendments by a 7-0 vote.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for staff?
I do have a question.
Ms. Love?
So, Jonathan, this is I know it's a PD, but what was that property, what was that originally gonna be? This doesn't really tell us what was planned for that parcel.
Let's see. Go back here. You see there's Village D, that's kind of in orange there, and the parcel that we're discussing is in red with the black outline there. So Village D in the concept area is a mixed-use area, so a mixture of both commercial and residential. So the arbors of Fort Mill is the apartment component that's directly underneath there, so this would be the complementary commercial component.
So everything in that peachy color, that part is already developed?
Correct.
Okay, so this is the last remaining corner of this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just a general comment in regards to that type of facility going in there. That is, there is a big need in regards to childcare in that area, so this is would be, I think, a good addition in regards to this, so, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor?
Good evening, Madam Chair, council members. My name is Eddie Moore with McAdams. I am assisting David Buse with Vulcan Properties and glad to answer any questions that you may have. I do have a couple slides, but here to answer any questions if you do have those.
Yeah, no questions at this time. Again, just looking forward. Again, this being first reading, we're continuing to review this, but, again, as I mentioned to Jonathan, I think this is a critical component for that area, so.
Yes, sir.
Eddie, I do have one question.
Yes,
Good to
ma'am.
see you.
Good to see you.
Have the neighbors, are all the neighbors aware of this?
Yes,
And you feel like everybody's in support of,
They are. We haven't had anybody reach out to us about this. The one interesting thing about this PD amendment, we're not changing the intensity of the site or changing any of the land uses. We're just asking to calculate parking in a different way, in addition to what is currently allowed under the 2006 ordinance.
and I'm assuming that hasn't been determined. Is that are we approving all of that tonight, Jonathan? Are we approving that part of the,
It's a PD amendment,
So-
so it's a change, yeah.
so the parking, are we approving a difference in the parking tonight, or does that yet remain to be seen?
No, so the request is to have the flexibility to, at the applicant's election or any future developer that might inherit the property, to pursue parking that's derived from the ITE manual rather than the 2006 zoning code. So they have the flexibility to move forward with the 2006 requirement or try to go the ITE route with zoning administrator sign off on the method which they select for the manual.
And as love, the slide that's up, it currently based off the proposed size of the facility, there's 80 spaces that are required. And the bullets that you see below that, for the ITE manual, it varies between 30 and 48. And Jonathan had the site plan that was up, and then looking at the site plan, we're proposing 50 spaces. So even based off the ITE manual, we're still above what is recommended for those, for this use. But it's below the 80. And it's, again, it's based on the shape of the property. It's a pie shape, so we have a front and basically two backs to it. So it's and David and his group have developed many daycare facilities in the area around Charlotte, in the Triangle. And this is just kind of an example of those that Vulcan has built over the past few years, and the sizes and the parking that is provided for those facilities. And as you see, the highest one is 51 spaces, and we're right at
I'm
50
assuming it helps
spaces.
that these students aren't driving themselves and parking while they're in class.
Correct.
They're being dropped off and picked up at a particular time. and-
Yes, ma'am.
and Maybe maybe that works for that use.
Any other comments?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor?
Move to close.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Does this need to be in it?
Do we need to add the amendment?
I think it's a PD amendment, so it should be incorporated, but you tell
Is it-
me.
Yes, if you could include in
Okay.
that motion the
Yeah.
additional amendments.
Okay, so, motion to approve with the addition of the additional amendments as stated in the presentation.
Second.
Motion and a second. And those are the additional considerations are the ones that are bulleted out into the agenda.
Correct.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Move now to public hearing, item number 8, rezoning action. Hold a public hearing and consider first reading, case number 23-19, tax map number 61800000056, 057, and 058, to rezone from RUD to LI. That's 10.67 acres in District 5. Mr. Bueno?
Yes, this application would be to rezone those three parcels here on Mount Holly Road. They are currently RUD today. The applicant is proposing to go to LI. The proposal is to construct about 45,000 square feet of multi-tenant flex space for a light industrial park. So there's a conceptual design of what that park would look like once developed. Here's the context for the area on Mount Holly Road. So this proposal is consistent with the comp plan and future land use map. The light industrial district is consistent with the I-77 corridor employment future land use designation. There is additional LI property in the area immediately adjacent to the south and nearby to the north. So staff recommends approval, and by a 7-0 vote, Planning Commission likewise recommends approval.
Any questions for staff? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak against this request? If you'll please come forward and state your name, give your address.
Hi, my name's Amy Bigham. My address is 2229 Mount Holly Road, Rock Hill. My property is directly across from this property that is being rezoned, or you're trying to rezone. I'm with my mother, my husband, other people that live directly across. We are all opposed against it. If you have taken the time to drive down 901, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, it's a very busy highway. We cannot get out of our driveway as it is. We already have a warehouse, a refrigeration warehouse being built on Lazy Hawk Road, which pours into 901, which is right beside this location. We have 2 truck stops. We have the interstate. Lots of traffic coming off the interstate, lots of trucks flying up and down the road. There's a daycare right across from me, or right beside me. You have traffic trying to get in and out of the daycare, which also acts as a food bank. Traffic lines up in the median, which is very dangerous, which also makes it difficult for us to get in and out of our driveways. We do not need any more warehouses, anything that's going to require trucks, business of that nature on 901. We can't handle it. Those roads, I mean, unless you're trying to push all of us out, we do not need any type of business like that. It's an eyesore. It's going to bring probably more crime. People go through my mailbox as it is, walking back and forth from the Flying J going to gosh knows where. So we do not want it. We do not need it, unless it is your intention for us that grew up there, that have lived there all our lives, to leave so you can develop whatever else it is you want. We realize that we are the hot spot of York County, first entrance into York County off I-77, last exit out. We don't need it. We don't want it. And that's pretty much all I can say.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against this request?
Yeah, I've lived there my whole life, 59 years, and my family lives across the street from my everything. Well, I mean, like she said, there's 2 truck stops on the other side of the interstate, and there is a daycare center there, and this industrial park isn't needed. That's it's residential land. It's not. I mean, we my part of the family owns right at 30 acres, and across the road from it. It'll never be sold. And I mean, it was my granddaddy's land, and all the little parcels down Frostproof Trail, every bit of it's our family, and it's not needed. That would be a real burden for us, because it's, like she said, it is hard getting in and out of the driveway now. They've made it a 4-lane highway. I mean, it used to be a 2-lane country road, now it's a 4-lane highway. And now you want to do this too? But I mean, there's houses on each side of that. It's a daycare across the road from it, and it's really not needed in that location. I know the ones who bought it probably bought it for that reason, but I mean, it's always been farmland and housing. Now you want to put an industrial park there? That's not needed.
Thank you, sir.
That's all I got to say.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against? Please come forward. Y'all don't need to wait for me. If you want to vote, anybody who wants to speak, come on.
My name's Rick Bigham, 2229 Mount Holly Road, Rock Hill. The main concern there is the traffic. If I come off of I-77 every day coming home from work, there's a huge fear of getting rear-ended trying to turn in my driveway. You throw more activity there and more trucks, more employees, then it's going to be worse. Not to mention that our property, our house, is directly in front of that. So whatever time trucks, vehicles, workers go in and out of that, the lights are going to be right in my house. It's going to be the noise, excuse me. It's going to be the noise, it's going to be the traffic, it's going to be the lights. The bigger you get, the more riffraff you get as well. Really not a lot we can do about that, but as it's progressively grown down there, it's gotten worse. So we don't want it. We're against it. And, you know, I just don't think that with the cold storage warehouse that's already going down there, I think the plate is full on that corner of the highway. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak against? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Motion and a second to close public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, public hearing is closed. Do we have a new motion?
Motion to approve.
So we have a motion to approve first reading, and that's first reading only. I do want to say thank you to the individuals who have come out to speak tonight. I want you to know that you're heard. I was born and raised here. I have concerns about the traffic issues out there. I would like to know, has there been any effort at all by the applicant to do any sort of meeting with the residents out in the area at all?
Not that I have been informed of.
None out there. So I'll share this with you, and it's one of those things that's difficult for me because, you know, when I first got on council, there was a question of how do you approach these things? Well, the individual has, for whatever reason, made it through Planning Commission with a unanimous vote. There is development that's happening out there. I am very concerned about that. I do not expect to support this going forward, but this is 3 readings. There is an opportunity for that applicant to reach out to see if there's something that can work better with the community, because this area is located in an area where perhaps there's something else that wouldn't be that you also wouldn't like in that area, what RUD allows by right and what light industrial does. I will support first reading only, but only because I think that that's just a process to allow further discussion, but I do not expect to support this and expect to reject this moving forward. But to be consistent with the policy, to gather more information and to give that, I would consider that. Mr. Roddy?
I just wanted to ask staff, what year was 901 widened to the 4-lane? Any off the top of your head?
I do not know that information.
Okay. Because one thing I'll just say, just in general, something's gonna come there. Whether this business park is the right thing, that's still up for debate, but just know something is gonna come there eventually. It's not my district, we typically kind of lean on the council person's district. But just know, if anybody wants to control what comes there, I suggest buy it. Then you can control what comes there, because I can see it now every time a piece of property is purchased or sold, someone wants to do something with it. Somebody doesn't want them to do something with it, but it was up for sale and somebody happened to buy it and try to fulfill their own wish. But we do try to make sure the right fit comes there, that it doesn't disturb the quality of life of any surrounding neighbors. But you're on a 4-lane, it's in a growing area. I can't see saying no every single time something comes up for a vote in that area, because we know it's gonna change. It's changed since I was in high school. I remember when 901 was a 2-lane to get to 77. So, but just kind of keep that in mind when the developer does reach out. And like Chris said, you want to weigh what can come there now versus what's being proposed. It's going to be some good and bad on both sides. Kind of use your best judgment as to what you would like to see in the area and move forward with it.
We actually don't take any further comments, but what I did do is I left my card with my number at the end with our clerk. If you'll please pick that up, I'd like to talk with you further. I did have some other residents who were active in the area who called up in support of it, but it was because I don't know that they had the full information, and it does trouble me that the developer's not here and did not speak in favor. I think we've already closed the public hearing. Okay. I think what I would suggest that you do is reach out to your community and the residents out there. That's going to be critical. I think taking a listen to what the community residents have spoken out against and the concerns that they have, I think is critical for that area. I'm very familiar with it. I ride it all the time, and there are concerns, especially with all of everything that was mentioned. There are concerns with the development that's happening through there. So I would encourage you to reach out, make that connection and talk through that. Oftentimes you can find that where there is at least a willingness to have a discussion about it, there are deed restrictions, there are other things that can be done to try and understand what you want to accomplish and see if there's a way to make the community embrace that. So I would encourage you to do that. Is there any other?
Yep. Okay. Jonathan, what about a TIA? At this point, are they required to do that? At what point will they be required to do a TIA?
So they are not required to do one now at the rezoning stage, but once they come forward with a plan for development and to do construction on the site, they would be required to do a TIA at that point. And we'd have very exact information on the size of the buildings, the uses that are going in there, and they'd be held to those numbers. And if for some reason their conceptual tenant mix changes and different uses go in there, they'd have to account for that in a modified TIA to make sure there's no mitigation required.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Comments?
Jonathan, did you have a picture in this presentation that shows like a real-life picture of what's there now? Yeah, that. I want to look at that. So, I know that, Strawberry Road, those are all residential, and over on the other side is residential. This picture in the middle of this looks very out of place to me. And so if you go back to the cartoon picture that we were looking at a minute ago, I think there is it's not my district. And I just think there's a big jump from that rural development to, I love purple, but I don't like seeing it on a county map, I'll just tell you. But from rural development, we expect all of those neighbors down Strawberry Road and Marshall Road to end up being employment, I-77 employment. I don't understand the transition, how we, maybe this is how we transition into what this map shows, but this is very concerning to me that we are going from rural development to I-77 corridor employment, I mean, is this a 50-year plan or a 20-year plan or a 10-year plan? Because I would be concerned if I lived in any of this green area here.
So yes, it is a plan. It's the 2035 plan, and it is a guide for county council to make decisions. And you all adopted this map to guide your future decisions on applications such as this one. And it's not meant to state that by the year 2035, everything in purple on this map is going to be something synonymous with employment. What it is suggesting that when applications come forward that you're considering for rezoning from the existing zoning district, that it should be something that is geared towards employment rather than more housing. That's what the plan is looking for. And all of the I-77 corridor employment is, by its name, going to be adjacent to I-77. And with the I-77 South corridor, small area plan that was done a couple of years ago, that was peeled back quite a bit. So previously, it was literally just 2 miles out on either side of 77, and that's where all the pink was. It was fairly indiscriminate. So that was peeled back in targeted areas just a few years ago.
I'm gonna say how I feel about this, because this is disturbing to me, and I'm willing to help you fix this right here.
I'm working on it
Okay.
myself.
So we have an initiative. One of our strategies, we feel like, is to save farmland. I have a concern that I was gonna speak about in a few minutes, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it right now. Let me dig. I got a little bit of paper right here. But in the non-agenda comments, I think that we, when we were looking at another one of the rezonings earlier, one of the comments was that this property is not currently being used for agriculture. We as a council are going to need to define what being used for agriculture means, because until recently, it meant it was 5 acres or more. It didn't mean that it was a farm. It didn't mean that they had to have any livestock on it. It just meant that agricultural was land, and large land. So when I look at this neighborhood and I say, you know, this is worse than what we're doing to farms, because this already has multiple people living on it. And so we are going to make these people miserable one rezoning at a time. I am a very strong opposed no to this. And it's unfortunate that it's so close to 77, but I got a feeling you were there before 77. And so I understand the need for commercial along an interstate, and state is, but I believe that the people who live here are more important than anything. And until we decide that we're going to protect these people and their homes, we are doing them an injustice. And I think this zoning, I think the future land use designation in this case is very unfortunate.
Any other comments?
I have one more.
Mr. Roddy?
If any of you have attended any council meetings and we come up and we talk about the 2035 land use plan, we get people that sit up here and sit out there that argues, well, it doesn't fit the 2025 land use plan, you shouldn't do it. Fast forward to today, we're saying the 2025 to 2035 plan says this is what it should be, but yet and still we don't want to do it. The warning to this council has always been that that 2035 plan, we just can't swap it in and out when we want to. Either we're going to go by it or we're not. Let's trash it or let's go by it, because I'm seeing it both ways, and it doesn't feel good when we use it against people that it doesn't say it, so we can't do it. But when the plan says this is what we see this area going to, we revert back and say, we don't see that happening, we shouldn't do this. So the warning to this council is, let's don't push it and pull it when it's convenient. If we're gonna go by the 2035 plan, let's use it across the board. Let's don't make any exceptions, let's don't do any favors. Let's make it the gospel, because I don't like it when we go back and forth with it. Use it when it's convenient, don't use it when it's not. That's not right. People they volunteered their time studied this whole council, set a vision for it, and we signed off on it. This is the 2035 plan that we're gonna use. And so we're telling those, but it's not the time to speak, sir. I'm trying to set it to where we're gonna do what we say we're gonna do, and let's not push and pull it when it's convenient. Let's be fair to everybody who's petitioned, who the 2035 plan fits or it doesn't fit. I'm saying let's be consistent. And I said it a couple weeks ago. We're not doing our job when we're not being consistent with what our paperwork says we should be doing. It doesn't matter to me one way or another, but when it comes to my district and this comes up, I want to be consistent. That's what we should be looking for, is consistency, and not just what fits tonight and what fits next week.
I agree. I want to say one more thing. I agree with Councilman Roddy. And I think the consistency is very important, because if you live in an area that's green, you live there because it's, and I'm saying green on our map is rural development, okay? You live there because it's a rural area. And I think we need to be consistent with what you expect. You don't expect to have an industrial use, a map change, and now your zoning doesn't matter anymore. How your property is zoned, we're like, okay, it's zoned residential, but our goal is to make it commercial. I mean, that's not being consistent with what the people expect. So I think we did a lot of reviews. We did a lot of reviews on we just passed the comprehensive plan, and each council member looked at their district very closely, and said, you know, this is, we had the liberty of saying we like this, we don't like this for these areas and everything. And District 5 had a lot of purple in it, which we eliminated a lot of that purple. But in this case, I don't know how you take an area that is already developed as neighborhoods and plan for a different land use without those people knowing. You are pulling their land out from under them to rezone for a totally different use.
No, I'm not saying.
I think,
that-
well, look, we're not going to continue the back and
I was
forth.
still speaking and she jumped. I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just saying let's be consistent.
I agree with
with
you.
how we
You're
use
right.
how we using the 2035.
I think-
I'm not saying we should approve it one way or another.
You're right.
If I may, one of the things that I do think that we need to keep in mind is that this area, and in fact, the Lazy Hawk area is currently under annexation from the city of Rock Hill. This RUD, I'm not sure that the RUD that's on this 5-lane road needs to go to residential either, but I want the folks that are out here, since it's my district, to hear me very clearly. I support you. I understand your concerns. I agree with the concerns that you have. I think that there are issues with RUD that maybe you need to consider as well. I think the level of how much is being included in that area, the plan that's been proposed, is a bit of a concern. I think that light industrial, there would have to be there would have to be a lot of changes that would make that consistent with this group. But when you're talking about that 4-lane, and it being right next to it, you've got to be able to at least have a conversation with the developer, sit down and talk to them. I'm willing to open up an office. Let's sit down, let's talk through it, let's see what your plans are, what you've got, and let's talk through it. Let's at least have a discussion about it, because it's going to happen. Some development of any kind, whether it's residential, whether it's maintains as RUD, or whether it goes to general commercial, something's going to happen. And we should have the conversation now and be open, and I'm willing to host that and to do that for my district. If the orange cards go out to certain radius of folks, but we can open it up to whoever wants to come and listen, and that's something that I'm going to put on the developer to come forward and share his concerns. Can we move on?
Yeah, just one quick comment. I'm just going to piggyback on what you stated. Again, this is first reading. I think it's important that communication that happens between first and second reading can be pretty amazing what happens sometimes in regards to that discussion. So again, I think having those conversations between first and second reading is really critical. So again, just want to share that with you all.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 4-2. Item number 2 council to amend and provide third reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 33 of the York County Code of Ordinances in order, did I skip one?
Yeah.
I think it
Oh
is.
my gosh, my paper's all mixed up.
Old business.
Old business.
Yep.
Rezoning action, consider third reading, case number 23-04, tax map number 666-000002, 325, 666-0202-002, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, and 16, to rezone from UD to LI, 5.064 acres, District 5.
I make a motion to approve third reading with the amended conditions of approval in Exhibit A dated May 1, 2023, and the amended rezoning site plan in Exhibit B dated April 13th, 2023. I'm going to read those conditions. This is Exhibit A. Number 1, no
Should we read- Do read them out, everything?
I had a little note to read.
Okay.
No vehicular access drives are permitted into Rainey Street from any parcels included in the application. 2, the site plan for the proposed development shall be limited to one access point on North Anderson Road. All other access points shall be removed prior to the establishment of the use. 3, the rezoning site plan entitled Right Solution Truck Care, prepared by Camco Engineering, Inc., and dated April 13th, 2023, is attached and incorporated herein as Attachment A. All future development shall be in substantial conformance with the plan. 4, enhanced landscaping shall be installed at the main entrance on Anderson Road, consistent with the rezoning site plan and prior to final zoning compliance approval. 5, the existing building should be removed from the site prior to final zoning compliance approval. 6, a Type D buffer shall be installed along the property boundary adjacent to Garrison Road prior to final zoning compliance approval. 7, a Type C buffer shall be installed along the property boundary adjacent to Rainey Street prior to final zoning compliance approval. 8, an 8-foot tall opaque fence of vinyl PVC material shall be installed in the Type B, C, D buffers in a location consistent with Attachment A prior to final zoning compliance approval. 9, and last, the area of tax map parcel 666-02-02-012 and -016 shall remain undisturbed buffer.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. All right. I think we are now to old business, item number 2, council to amend and provide third reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 33 of the York County Code of Ordinances in order to clarify definitions related to employee classification, to refine policies and procedures related to recruitment, equal opportunity standing, hiring practices, reclassifications, performance appraisals, termination of employment, and resignation practices, to create an alternative work arrangement policy, to replace the telecommuting policy, to amend the workers' compensation and annual leave policies, to amend the county substance abuse policy, including requirements for post-accident testing, to amend the inclement weather policy, and to provide for other matters related thereto.
I make a motion to approve the recommendations of the Finance and Operations Committee with the noted conditions, also to change the review of the human resources policy and ordinance to yearly rather than biannual, and to add policy can be discontinued at any time at the county's sole discretion.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have already handled new business. Item number 1. Item number 2, council to consider first reading of an ordinance to establish operating and capital budgets for the operation of the county government of York County for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2023, to provide for the levy of taxes for York County for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2023, to provide for the expenditure of tax revenues and other county funds, and provide for other fiscal matters relating to county government.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? I will say that this is first reading. There is an entire budget calendar that's been put out. Encourage the public. This has been made public. The council got a booklet dropped on them, and we're wading through that. We've got several workshops, several public hearings, and I know that there's going to be some discussion and continue to dig into this, but we encourage you the residents to get plugged in and to pay attention to that and to get the budget calendar. I believe it's on the website. It's on the website so that you can attend, and we encourage that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item number 3, council to consider approving first reading of an ordinance to amend the Code of of York, South Carolina, Chapter 51.05, Water and Sewer Rates and Charges, Terms and Conditions of Service, Sections B2 and B10, in order to amend the water rate schedule and sewer rate schedule, and to provide for matters related thereto.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Mr. Roddy?
This is for staff. Does this take into account anything that Rock Hill's, that the news that just came out, what Rock Hill's doing with its water rates?
Yes, sir. The three reasons listed, the first one being the increases from Rock Hill that we're passing along. We've got some capital projects coming down that we need to be able to fund, as well as the normal inflation that we've seen throughout everything. But the primary reason was the increase from Rock Hill.
Thank you.
Do we have any control over those rate increases?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Committee and other reports. Finance and Operations Committee meeting Monday, May 1st, 2023. Chairwoman Allison Love.
The Finance and Operations Committee met.
Did we not vote? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thought I was in trouble.
Committee and other reports.
Okay, the Finance and Operations Committee met this afternoon. Present were council members Tom Audette and Tommy Atkins and myself. And we had, this is a lot, y'all gotta listen to me read a little more. Let's start with the recommended appointments for our boards and committees. First is Rock Hill, York County Convention and Visitors Bureau. We recommended for the consideration of appointment for Natalie Huckstraw for a first term and Ben Boyles for a first term. Board of Zoning Appeals, recommendation for the consideration of the reappointment of Jeff Hunter for a second term, and the recommendation for consideration of the reappointment of Jeff Blair for a second term. We had a lot of Jeffs in tonight's agenda. Yeah, I know. Tonight was the night to be named Jeff, if you wanted to be on a board or commission. Recommendation for a consideration of the appointment of John Robinson for a first term to the Board of Disabilities and Special Needs, and for that same board, a recommendation for consideration of appointment for Adele Spears for a first term. The Employee Grievance Committee, recommendation for the consideration of the appointment of Stephanie Johnson for a first term. She would be representing the solid waste collection and recycling category of that grievance committee. Lake Valley Parks and Recreation Committee, recommendation for the consideration of Jeff Grayson for a first term. And Flint Hill Fire Tax District Board, recommendation of James Lightsey for a second term. There's more. Okay, we have some discretionary funds distributions, so I'm just going to try to make this brief, but we've got a good many things here, good things for good people in the county. We considered the allocation of funds from District 3 to the town of Sharon in the amount of $16,000, and from District 6 to the Bethel Men's Shelter in the amount of $2,000. The allocation of funds from District 6 to Pathways in the amount of $2,500. The allocation of funds from District 6 to Safe Passage in the amount of $2,500. The allocation of funds from District 6 to Camp Canaan in the amount of $2,000. Allocation of funds from District 6 to Feed the Hungry in the amount of $2,000. The allocation of funds from District 6 to the Life House in the amount of $2,000. The allocation of funds from District 6 to the Catawba Area Coalition for the Homeless in the amount of $1,000. And the allocation of funds from District 6 to Family Promise of York County in the amount of $1,000. So we liked all of that. And then finally, we received a finance update, and that was our meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. We do not have any citizen concerns. Are there any council member new non-agenda comments? Mr. Roddy.
Just want to make sure you saw me okay. Now, I just want to remind staff that we're supposed to be having some follow-up to the Public Works Committee meeting concerning the landfill and recycling centers. We're supposed to be bringing an ordinance back or something. So can we get that slated for the next couple weeks?
The last time I talked with Mr. Moore about that, Public Works was still working on that.
Okay, all right.
Do you intend to have another committee meeting? Did y'all make recommendations?
Yeah,
Oh, you have another committee meeting?
Yeah,
Okay. Any other comments?
Yep.
Mr. Audette?
So I want to take this time to talk about an issue that has been raised up in the community. These concerns have been very, very much vocalized for the last year and a half. It has been something that impacts our kids, our grandchildren. In fact, it was such a big issue, I've received a petition with multiple signatures on this. Okay. And what I want to talk about tonight is the impact of gender identity sexual books that are targeting our kids in the York County Library from the age of 2 to 17. I have been, as we've gone through this process, the number of people that have reached out to me on this issue has been absolutely astonishing. We have done an inventory and looked at the number of books that are targeting the kids from age of 2 to 17 with books that talk about gender identity and sexuality. And right now there's 416 copies in the York County Library. Copies. All right. That equals down to 138 books, 416 copies. I've got parents that are coming to me with kids and grandchildren that are extremely concerned about bringing their kids into the children's section of the York County Library because of this book content they're seeing. In fact, I've handed out a pamphlet. I think you all have this information here. I handed out a pamphlet here that from one of the constituents that emailed me, and they said, reaching out to you about the books that are seeing in the York County Library, the content is not appropriate for my child. And this book, again, is called Pink, Blue, and You. This book is for kids that are 4 to 8 years old. Okay, in this book, you all have the pamphlet. It shows a girl and a boy talking and having this discussion on this page, and this page says to be a girl, to be a boy, or to be both, or to be neither. This is content that's in this libraries. And our kids and our grandchildren are seeing this content. To me, this is unacceptable. This should not be happening in our libraries. Not happening. The inventory, and I've got a full inventory right here, and y'all have the inventory of what's in these libraries, okay? And it's been increasing. It has absolutely been increasing. I've had conversations with the library in regards to moving these books from the children's section to the adult section of the library. These kids can walk in, they can grab these books. If they're at least in the adult section, parents could choose to grab them, but not the kids to grab them. This is a major issue. This is impacting every kid, every child from 2 to 17. And another thing, when we did the inventory in this library, there were 517 copies in there. 416, again, were targeted towards kids from 2 to 17. You had 130 or 145 for adults. That's 3 times the number of books more than what the adults have in there. This is wrong. This is wrong, and our kids should not be exposed to this. The request has been for them to move these books to the adult section of the library. I would request from this council that we have further discussions about this in our next workshop. Thank you.
Any other non-agenda comments? There was some discussion that's brought up about the Ag Committee. This was something that was brought up in our workshops and something that will be followed up on. There are 3 council members who were interested in serving on that, and the purpose of that will be to study the agriculture community in York County and identify ways to support the ag business, ag education, ag culture, also to basically explore options for those, not to take any action, but to explore the options, to have discussion about that, and then to present results of that research back to the council to have a limited fashion in order to do that, so that has been a discussion that's come up. I believe that we have a motion for executive session.
Yes, we do. Receipt of a legal advice request to authority condemnation regarding project 19301, track 3939A, Steel Creek Force Main Replacement, contractual matter, no trespass agreement with Fort Mill Police Department.
We have a second, motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we will move into executive session in 2 minutes.